Okay, so last week I sent you a funny video.
Yes, you did. And that's what stimulated this conversation.
That's right. That's right. And the video was two kids had a big watermelon in front of them, and they were wrapping rubber bands around the watermelon. And they probably had, by the time the video kicked in, they probably had, I don't know, 100,
At
150, maybe
least, yeah.
more rubber bands. And they were getting close to the end when the watermelon was going to burst, and they put one on, they put another one on, they're all standing back where both of them are, and then it explodes.
Yep.
And then the caption comes up, running injuries.
Yeah, just the straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was really like it was a very poignant Instagram post, and I think about this a lot. Honestly, this is probably more of the thought in just my training and my coaching goes towards this very topic than pretty much anything else.
Hmm.
And what we're really getting at is like number one, avoiding running injuries, but number two, quantifying how much training we're doing via all these different apps and systems and and then how to progress it, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's I don't know, John. I think it's one of the most difficult things there is to do in triathlon,
Yeah.
and I find it way easier if I just was just a runner,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I think that oftentimes triathletes conflate themselves with I'm a runner.
Hmm.
And are you a runner or are you a triathlete? Because you have to train different, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I also see, I subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels about like running and triathlon and I think that there's this I don't know, almost this myth around that you should once again as a triathlete you should train like a runner.
Hmm.
What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that?
Well,
To start with?
I think you're spot on. Now, and if you look at the stats of injuries in triathlon, they are mostly related to running, and because running is a tough sport to avoid injuries. And but I really like how you're explaining that you worry about triathletes because each rubber band on that watermelon, that could be a swimming rubber band, that could be a biking rubber band, that could be a strength training rubber band, it could be whatever work a rubber band. Whereas if you're just running, those rubber bands are predominantly running, rubber bands. And so just a little bit different type of model in that we may not see that additional stress being applied to the watermelon because we're swimming and we're not running, but yet the system is still trying to adapt to the stress. But I'm curious with your background, your sports medicine, your athletic training expertise, walk us through the different types of injuries and the category of injury that you're really thinking about in terms of avoiding for athletes.
So yeah, this is really interesting. It's funny. I spoke about this week in my class and like
Oh, nice.
categorize the difference between like an acute versus a chronic injury.
Yeah.
So when we think about this in like the context of sports medicine, chronic is something that lasts a long time. But there's also the caveat, chronic can be we built it up over a long time and we only are starting to see the canary in the coal mine, the pain,
Mhm.
right? And so some people will say, oh, well, it's only been hurting me for a week. That's an acute injury. But we all really, I think need to think more about the mechanism. The acute injury to me, if you're running, is you trip and you fall.
Mhm.
That's that, like, and I don't know, let's say you bang your knee on the concrete. That's an acute injury. If you're running, let's say you go out for a run this afternoon, John, and all of a sudden your hamstring starts to hurt. That's not acute.
Right.
The medical world, the medical establishment will say that's acute because it's only been a couple of days, let's say that you've been feeling it, but it
Mhm.
was the culmination of all those rubber bands that now has led to the outward pain, I guess, as you were. And remember, the pain is just a sign. Usually, it's a relatively late sign that we're actually starting to, you, I guess, I don't know, even do some damage to the system.
Mhm.
Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, no, that's perfect. I love that, and I think just to extend that a little bit, and you and I have talked about this, is running or injuries in general, overuse injuries especially, they're not binary.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not injured and then you're injured. Yes, the watermelon was not exploding, then the watermelon exploded. That's binary, but it's not, it's different levels of injury that's happening even to the watermelon. The structures are changing, it's, compressing more. And then eventually it hits a point that you're injured. But really, when we're talking about avoiding injuries, it's not that we're not injured today and we're injured tomorrow.
So my last run before my last race, my last training run before my last race, doing a little bit of speed work on some hills. Okay. Just not much, honestly. It was going to be like I think it was going to be a 10K run with like 2 or 3 minutes of hills. Not much. I was 2K from the house, easy part of my run, like just cooling it down. All of a sudden my calf, I felt it.
Mm,
And I'm like 10 days out from my next month for my race. It wasn't that step that I took,
yeah, right.
right? Do I remember that step? Yes, because pain imprints memories into
Hmm.
your brain, right? So you think, oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have just taken that 8,000th step
Yeah.
of that workout or 8,001, whatever the case is. And I think people often think of that. Oh, I took a little one too many steps.
Hmm.
Wasn't that one? It was all of the accumulation of like building towards like the last run of a build cycle to a race. I have to look back, in my opinion, I have to look back months
Yeah.
to actually see where was the error in my ways, right? And then the deeper part, and you already alluded to this, is we often think, oh, that was a running injury.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, right?
Hmm.
That was a cumulative stress injury from swimming, biking, running, weight training, mobility, whatever the case may be, that all went into that all of a sudden pain in my calf.
Hmm.
And yes, it hurt to run. If I, let's say 2 days later I went for a run again, it would still hurt, and biking wouldn't hurt. It doesn't mean it was a running injury.
Yeah, right.
And so I want to start this with a new classification. Are you ready, John?
Okay.
Triathlon injury,
There you go.
right? Because
Hmm.
even though maybe it hurts more running, it wasn't just the running that
Right.
built into this. I'll give you one more example. This actually happened this week to me. See, but I'm getting smarter about this stuff. So over Christmas break, I had my time trial bike, but I really didn't want to ride it. So I was mostly riding my road bike because I was in some unfamiliar places. And so now I got a race coming up in 4 weeks. I'm like, I got to get on the time trial bike. So for the last 2.5, 3 weeks, I've been trying to do as much as I can on the time trial bike. Well, my hamstrings aren't used to that position,
Hmm.
right? And my fitness is really quite good now, but the robustness of my hamstrings to be in an elongated position
Right.
for an extended period of time is not really there. And I feel it a little bit when I'm riding. Well, then I went for a run on, was it Monday? I think it was Monday. I went for a run and my hamstring started. I'm like, oh man, that's not feeling good.
Hmm.
What's in it? It would be really easy for me to say, oh, running injury. But I know it was the biking,
Yeah.
right? And so this week I didn't do much. I didn't do any time trial
Hmm.
positions. And I ran today around this morning. My hamstring's fine. Right. And so I think we really do need to try and find this mix between even swimming, right? You do a lot of kicking or you're kicking really large or whatever. You're still adding stress to the lower body where we tend to see these running injuries.
No, I love it. And on that same sort of line of thought, talk a little bit about how training in swimming and biking may lead to a running injury from a recovery
Yeah.
perspective.
No, for sure. And I think honestly, I think it's mostly biking. I
Hmm.
mean, unless you're doing specific like kick sets, which I have been doing over the last 2 or 3 months, I've been doing a lot of kicking. But I think we actually put more fatigue in the legs than we actually think riding, right? And we actually do more. I hate to say the word damage, but we do more damage to our legs than we think. And then it's, oh, well, it's fine. I'll rest my legs off the bike tomorrow and I'll ride tomorrow. And or run, sorry, apologize. Run tomorrow. So I rode. Now I rode along, let's say Sunday, I did a 4 hour bike ride. Well, I can run tomorrow because it's been a few days since I ran. and you're not really recovered from the ride yet. And I think it's really easy just to kind of get into this mindset of, well, I'm resting running when I'm riding, and you really aren't. And John, do you have on your watch the thing that tells you how much rest you need?
I don't think my watch does, but I don't look at it. If it
Okay, so a lot of people look at this, and I'm gonna tell you just because it's fun. Mine right now. Ooh, what does it say? Oh, I'm still needing 19 hours of recovery.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, but I'm gonna go for a swim in about 2 hours,
I was just going to say, you're going to take 19 hours?
right? And then I'm gonna swim again tomorrow, and I'm gonna run tomorrow, and like the watch is probably actually telling me like the what I probably should be doing.
Mhm.
But it's an interesting thing, right? Like a lot of the triathletes I know, they see that and they just kind of laugh at it, right?
Yeah.
Like I do a long Sunday bike ride. If I do anything over 3 hours, normally I get like a 48-hour recovery.
Hmm.
I'm not taking 2 days off,
No.
but really the watch knows, right? There's a lot of physiologic
Hmm.
information that have been built to these models, and it knows that you've built up this stress. But in the triathlete's mind, oh, that just means biking,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Well, that's because I had a long bike ride, but I'm okay to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, very dismissive. But it does also raise the point that we don't know what's ultimately going to cause the injury. And, outside of a broad, sort of perspective, it's hard to use a crystal ball and say, well, if you do this training program, boom, they're going to be injured. Oh, well, okay, there's some training programs, it's easy to predict that. But you know what I mean, where if we take a reasonable approach to training and we still end up getting injured, we just don't have a good way to predict that injury and or predicting even fitness gains. We've got some basic tenets that we try to follow, but it is a little bit of art and science to predict in 12 weeks that our fitness is going to be the best it can be for a race.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think the other thing that is really difficult around this is everyone's different,
Yeah, that's right.
right? And everyone's situation is so different. So you when you're offline, you said you're either training or you're working.
Yeah.
I feel like that with my life too. I'm either training or I'm working. I'm doing one or the other. And that's a completely different life than if you're either training or you're resting,
Hmm.
right? So like a professional athlete, that's a lot of times their life. It's
Right.
I'm either training or I'm resting. You're either training or you're working or you're resting, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And the other side of the stress is the work stress and
Hmm.
the kids stress and dealing with parents, the parents stress or
Hmm.
whatever. All of these things, they do fall into that. Um, we also know that there are some people that actually they recover better than others.
Yeah.
Genetically, one, but nutritionally, maybe two, right?
Hmm.
Like some people are a lot more spot on with their nutrition and they're just doing a little bit better job with that. Or they're ultimately some people are really focused on doing specific recovery metrics that or not metrics, things that might actually turn their dials just a little bit, right? And so that becomes really, really difficult to like, once again, like, let's say we have a podcast, which we do, and we say, hey, this is what you need to do.
Hmm.
And John, we're not even adding in age,
Yeah, right, right.
right? Because a lot of the research, and we've talked about this before, is on level athletes or pro level athletes.
Yeah.
But like, how much time does someone in their mid 50s need to recover or to repair versus somebody in their 30s?
Hmm.
Um, and then that's like chronological age. But what about biologically? Biologic age, which we know can also be quite variable.
No, I love it. And this is what I love about triathlon is you sit back and you say, I'm going to do a 70.3 or I'm going to do an iron distance event. That's 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike, 13-mile run, and twice that for an iron distance. And people will train specifically for a 1.2 mile swim. Not triathlete, but swimmers will train for a 1.2 mile swim or 2.4 miles. You just say, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do that endurance event. As a triathlete doing these endurance events, you got to do all three. And likewise with biking and running. People train for a half marathon or a marathon. And so how do you end up approaching, or how do you give advice to athletes for that load management to do a triathlon where individual sports are focusing on that event specifically?
Yeah. And it's so hard. And the thing I'm going to start with is first. Okay, so if you look at age groupers, so like
Hmm.
someone in their 50s, and you look at the difference between someone in their 50s that's really focused on running a half marathon and a triathlete that's doing doing the same, they're going to eventually run a half marathon. There's actually not much difference in their times that they're going to actually do the half marathon in,
Hmm.
right? Like when I was at my very, very peak, like, sub 130 half marathon was quite regular.
Yeah.
And maybe I was only 2 minutes slower doing an actual triathlon.
Right.
Right? And but not training like a half marathon runner, like
Hmm.
training like a triathlete. So we're
Yeah.
not that far off from these other sports, even cycling. I used to do some time trial racing in my age group. I wasn't very far off of like the top people that were only doing time trial racing.
Hmm.
Swimming's for me was a thing, but there's a lot of swimmers that swim master swim races that are triathletes and they can contend, right?
Yeah.
So it's this is an interesting paradox to really think about, what truly is the difference because really we're talking mostly about aerobic development,
Hmm.
right? Swim, bike, and run. Your hearts and lung, we talked about this many times. Heart and lung don't know the difference. You're aerobically developing for, I don't know, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a week. So then what is the ultimately needed to be good at each one of those things? And we've talked about this a lot as well. What's, the lowest effective dose,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Minimum effective dose. Yeah.
Minimum effective dose. And I think that that's something that I've really tried to push people on thinking about is what's the least amount of running you can do?
Yeah.
What's the least amount of cycling you can do? What's the
Hmm.
least amount of swimming you can do to get the best result possible?
Hmm. Hmm.
And sometimes it surprises people of how little you could do if you do it right, and also how much you could do and not actually see many gains. Like
Hmm.
kind of both sides of it. We talked about this many times about people like overtraining. Like a lot of age groupers in triathlon overtrain.
Yeah.
They just like, okay, I just got to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and then they actually don't get too much faster.
Hmm.
And then the only thing that stops them is them getting injured. It's yeah. So I think kind of take home messages is it has to be quite prescriptive, and you have to have a plan. And in my mind, your plan should be to do the least amount you need to do to get the result that you want.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that minimum effective dose is, I think it's a good concept to try to get across. I know I don't always follow that myself because I enjoy being out and doing things, but that's my dose is, more mental health at this
Yeah.
point. So, and just trying to get healthy overall. But, thinking back to the watermelon video, in that video, they were putting the same, as far as I could tell, the same rubber band in roughly the same spot for some band. And I think another way to think about training is some of the rubber bands, they're tighter than others. Some are looser. Or you're going to put that rubber band on a different part of the watermelon as opposed to the same part. And maybe you can fit more rubber bands on that watermelon before it actually bursts, which would be, the equivalent of thinking about durability in training and trying to build up the ability to withstand more stress or further distance or more intensity. I don't know. What do you think about?
I love what you just said, and I love the word durability
Mhm.
because that ultimately, in my opinion, is the number one most important thing. If you're not durable, how can you withstand the training?
Mhm.
Right. And as I still am coming back from my injuries and my bike crash, I've been thinking a lot about that one as well. And it's like, how can I now become more durable of a runner?
Mhm.
And actually, I read some interesting articles on this, and they were talking about there's a few things that I've been kind of concentrating on lately, and one was a predictive measure of when people get injured running. Now, once again, this goes back to just runners,
Right.
and the biggest predictor was it was having your long run be too long,
Mm,
right? Like having the spikes basically in your training plan.
hmm.
So if you're normally, let's say you're running 5 miles 3 or 4 times a week, like a triathlete would, and then all of a sudden you like, oh, I'm going to do a 10 miler on Sunday because I got time. That peak in one run is enough to injure you.
Hmm.
And what they were basically prescribing was slowly raise up all runs.
Yeah.
And but the traditional model of a marathoner is to do like, one long run a week and slowly progress that.
Mm,
It's a slow progression over months, if not years, to build that long run. And I think triathletes in particular that I've seen and even myself, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to run a 13-mile run in 4 weeks.
hmm.
My long run is at, I don't know, 8 miles. So in the next 4 weeks, I need to get up to 12 at least before my race. And I think that that's where the injuries are coming, is those spikes.
Hmm.
And so for me and the people that I've been working with and consulting with, we have really dialed back on that and just like, hey, like let's just keep going. Like if you're regularly doing 5, 6 miles, 5, 6 this week, maybe 5.5, 6.5, slowly build up the base
Hmm.
instead of just that one that one insult.
Yeah.
And sometimes that one insult can just be your race. Like just get to the race.
Hmm.
Because if you're running consistently, and I'll throw this out, like let's say 25 miles a week, 30 miles a week, that's in my opinion, that's all most age groupers need to actually have a really robust run in
Yeah.
a 70.3. And they actually don't need to be doing 11 mile, 12 mile, 13-mile runs to prepare themselves because once again, they're building themselves up in so many other ways.
Yeah. No, I
So
love it. And yeah, I think that having some good markers for the training program is important. And you and I also talk about that consistency probably trumps a lot of other things in training, and that consistency is building up that base of durability that you have to launch off of. So no, totally on board with that.
and I guess the other side is looking at the opposite side of what not to do, right? Is I've also seen this with many age groupers, but also some of the UNLV triathlon kids that we're working with, is they get really committed for 2 or 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And then something happens and they fall off for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they get right back at where they were. But it's like, well, you've detrained significantly,
Hmm.
especially when we're talking about musculotendinous strength and durability. Maybe cardiovascular, you don't fall off as fast and then go right back at it. And so it's that stochastic nature of training volume as well.
Yeah.
Whereas the long, slow approach of building up durability, I think, at least where I'm at today, maybe 5 years from now, I'll have a different opinion. I think is the way to long term be successful in triathlon.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I love it. And don't get in competition with others on social media in terms of best workouts or all that. You got to do your training program and what works for you as opposed to what somebody else is doing. Same thing if you're out on the bike path and someone passes you and it's like, oh, I'm gonna repass them. But no, it's not. You don't need to do that at all. Just do your training program.
I did want to talk about this new metric on Garmin watches, and I know it's only on like very select watches right now, and you have to have the right heart rate monitor. But there's this thing called running tolerance, and I've actually been messing around with it because I want to learn.
Okay.
So I've been training pretty regularly. I took a little bit of time off in November, so after the Marbella World Championship. So mid-December, I kind of started kicking back up again, and I've been really trying to pay attention to this thing. And so at first, it was saying my running tolerance was 38 kilometers per week. And
Interesting. Okay.
okay, that was just where it was kind of like its baseline for, and because even during my time off, I was still doing a little bit, right?
Mhm.
But it builds this tolerance based off of not just how far you run, but also how hard you run. So
Okay.
if I go for a really hard session, it actually counts for more kilometers as far as like the tolerance.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right. So now it's been 7 weeks in this build, and I'm at 43 kilometers per week. So I've only gained 4 kilometers per week of running tolerance.
Yep. So let me ask a question on the running tolerance. Is it tolerance for injury or
Yes.
tolerance for what you're getting a training response
I
from?
I think it might be, that's a good question. I think it's for injury,
Okay.
right? And so once again, I don't subscribe to this exact because I don't know their metrics and how they're
Yeah.
building this.
Yeah.
I'm personally testing it right now.
Yeah.
So like, for example, I ran today and I'm at 40 for this week. I'm at 43 kilometers per week. My actual running is 41. So I'm always trying to stay just a little bit below it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then tomorrow it'll be a little bit lower because, every day it does
Mm.
this, but hopefully over time the tolerance goes up.
Yeah.
But the lesson I think it's teaching me is low and slow, slow progression is way, way, way more important. And I feel personally, like, I know I said I had that little hamstring thing, but I actually feel personally like I'm running some of the best I've ran in years.
Hmm.
And I'm not really pushing these long runs
Yeah.
yet. And because I'm looking at this overall pushing the whole volume up
Hmm.
through a season because like for me, my A race of the year is going to be in July.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm racing in 4 weeks, but that's not my A race of the year. So like I'm also thinking long term.
Hmm.
What's going to get me to be the best I can be in July, not what's going to be the absolute best in February.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also something that triathletes do all the time is they love to move the goalpost,
Hmm.
right? Oh, I know on the calendar it says a B race. Oh, but you know what? It's a 70.3 and there's gonna be lots of people there and I want to do the best I can. You in this, so 2 weeks before, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going all in.
Hmm.
And I once again, I've talked to lots of triathletes about this, but like try not to move the goalposts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is a common mistake we make. But it's interesting on the tolerance part. The classic training program research came up with the advice of 10% at most change in mileage week to week. And it's sort of a pull the number out of the hat type of thing. But the idea was to build up that tolerance over a long period of time. 10% change in a week is not a lot. I mean, if you're running 10 miles week one, 10%, you got 11 miles week two, 12.1 miles week three. So it's a very slow progression, was the idea of that 10% rule. But more broadly, what it represented is uh, change is hard to adapt to. And if you do these big jumps in whatever intensity, time, whatever frequency, even that will introduce a risk of injury because it goes back to the recovery we talked about earlier. So that is interesting that Garmin has a tolerance on there. I wonder what the algorithm is.
And it doesn't know I assume it knows nothing about my swimming and biking. It's
Well, it
it's
knows something, but whether or not it integrates it,
right.
that's a good question.
Exactly. I don't think it does. I think it's
Yeah,
only going off of my running.
yeah. And
Okay.
your time
So then
training.
I have to mentally think about that. It's giving me this, but it's also measuring like heart rate variability and all these things as well every time I run.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it could be building something like that. But once again, I think the 10% is way too much, by the way,
Hmm.
10% per week. And I think that number was originally given for relatively elite athletes that were injured and coming back from injury.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which makes sense. If you're running, let's say, I don't know, 80 miles a week, and then I don't know, have a stress fracture and you're out for 6 or 8 weeks, that was the number that was historically given.
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, like 10% is a ton,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't sound like much when you're only running 10 miles a week.
Hmm.
But if you're running 50 miles a week, now you're running 55. The
Hmm.
next, then the next week you're running 61,
Hmm.
right? So then 10% becomes a lot,
Hmm.
right? And I like what you said about the adaptations are slow, especially when you get older.
Yeah. True.
right? We do know that, you and I in this point of our lives when we're fighting sarcopenia, right? We're fighting the natural decline of our bodies. And now I want to build as well,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Whereas when a lot of this, these numbers came out and research was being done, once again, it was on 20 and 30-year-olds, which are, in my opinion, like it's almost a different species when it comes to recovery.
Right. No, it can be a little misleading, or you use the information a little differently when you're up in your 50s, 60s than the 20s.
Yeah, I just honestly, we talked about this many years ago. I just don't want to slow down.
Hmm.
Like, can I get faster? Yeah, I get faster than I am today, but I'm never going to be as fast as I was when I was like 42.
Right.
Like, and that's okay, right? Like, if well, and I'm never say never because there could be some invention, some therapy. I don't know, freeze yourself or something,
Yeah.
cook yourself. I don't know that you could turn back time, but until that happens,
Yeah. Well, until that happens, we just keep doing what we can do, be consistent with training,
yep.
no big jumps in training, and load is more than just one sport.
So yeah, and like you said, no big gains, but also don't just turn it off either.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Right? Now, the one exception I think is if you're sick, turn it off.
Hmm.
Right? Like, yeah, go hang out in bed for a few days, like recover.
Yep.
But other than that, if even if your life gets busy, I would contend at least get a run in.
Love it.
Right?
Well, hope
Keep
everyone
30.
watched the rubber band watermelon video. Just by
Exactly.
search that, you'll find it.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, John. Well, hey, have a great weekend, and thanks for another awesome Friday afternoon.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Okay, bye.